because I had to.
Pull
It
back
has
the tension all the time.
yeah, and I can't remember what
The custom-designed automobiles and motorcycles that will clash in the gas-starved, not-too-distant future of Mad Max 2 are the result.
I have to kiss this movie star.
Mad Max 2 wasn't just a post-apocalyptic action movie. It was a resurrection wrapped in leather, blood, and automotive fury. One failed rock musical, it forced George Miller back into the wasteland. One spectacular stunt accident, it left a man with a broken leg but made the final cut. And one American title change, let's just say audiences didn't even know they were watching a sequel. These are 20 weird facts about Mad Max 2: The Road Warrior. But wait until the end, because the bonus fact, it's about how a doctor's medical training saved lives on the most dangerous film set in Australia. Rev your engines. We're hitting the Fury Road.
Staggering. And as a result of that, we started the film very high, very up, because...
Number 1. George Miller abandoned rock musical, creating Mad Max sequel. After Mad Max became a surprise hit, Hollywood suddenly wanted George Miller to direct everything. Studios offered him Rambo: First Blood and other major projects, but Miller turned them all down. Instead, he chose to work on a rock and roll movie called Roxanne with screenwriter Terry Hayes. They retreated to a friend's house in Victoria, taking long walks and frequently discussing the faults of Mad Max. But Miller eventually abandoned Roxanne's script entirely. By then, he hated Mad Max and hadn't watched it since its release. The failure of his rock project forced him back into the wasteland, this time with a bigger budget to create the epic car chase movie he'd originally envisioned. Sometimes artistic failure leads to cinematic masterpieces. Number 2, highest Australian budget ever, but Miller felt utterly defeated. The original Mad Max budget was somewhere between $350,000 and $400,000. Miller felt the movie suffered due to these limitations, so Mad Max 2 received 4.5 million Australian dollars, about $2 million US dollars. This made it the most expensive Australian movie production when filming began in winter 1981, but money wasn't Miller's biggest problem. I felt utterly defeated by the first Mad Max. I felt that the film was unreleasable, Miller confessed. The exhausting editing process, half of which he did himself for a year, made him face the evidence of what I hadn't done, what I'd failed to do every single day. It wasn't until fellow directors told him filmmaking is always tough that his attitude changed. Number 3. Mel Gibson ate dog food, wore secondhand S&M leather. Max's rundown, deteriorated appearance was Mel Gibson's idea. Between the first and second movies, Gibson wanted Max to look like he'd lost his humanity and descended into madness. Gibson's rugged, unshaven look included a missing arm sleeve on his jacket. Max had become so dehumanized that audiences see him eating dog food, though Gibson claimed he wasn't sure if it was actually dog food during filming. Most of the leather costumes were purchased from secondhand goods stores and S&M shops. Costume designer Norma Morrisseau was inspired by a leather fetish shop next door to her Sydney home. The post-apocalyptic punk aesthetic was literally born from the underground leather scene. Number 4. Movie inspired by Joseph Campbell mythology and samurai films. If the first Mad Max was based on Miller's experience as an ambulance driver, Mad Max 2 went down a more spiritual path. Miller drew inspiration from Joseph Campbell's 1949 book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces, which explores mythological hero journeys. The film was also influenced by Akira Kurosawa's samurai classics like Seven Samurai and Yojimbo. Miller wanted the Max stories told visually, giving Gibson only 16 lines of dialogue, including saying, "I only came for the gasoline" twice. The movie is narrated by the feral kid in old age, making it a folklore story rather than a straightforward film. Miller discovered that Mad Max had tapped into the universal idea of a mythical hero, particularly resonating in Japan, where lone samurai stories were deeply embedded in cultural mythology. Number 5. Stuntman broke leg, spectacular accident stayed in final movie. During filming, stuntman Guy Norris performed a motorcycle stunt where he was supposed to fly over a crashed car. Instead, he drove directly into the wreckage, breaking his femur when his leg clipped the vehicle. The 21-year-old Norris flipped wildly through the air, landing in a pile of cardboard boxes that were considered safety equipment in 1981. The accident was so dramatic and spectacular that Miller kept it in the final cut. Fortunately, Miller was a qualified medical doctor and immediately examined Norris before he was taken to the hospital. Despite the broken leg, Norris returned to the set for a fight scene with Mel Gibson. Decades later, he became supervising stunt coordinator on Mad Max Fury Road, proving that some accidents create lifelong careers. Number 6. Humongous wore hockey mask before Jason Voorhees made famous. Long before Jason Voorhees terrified audiences with his hockey mask in Friday the 13th sequels, Humongous was already rocking the mask look in Mad Max 2. The hulking leader of the brutal gang used the mask to hide his disfigurement. Fan theories suggest Humongous might be Goose from the first movie, who got seriously burned and now wears the mask to hide his scars. In the original script, he actually was supposed to be Goose, but the idea was scrapped. The part was played by Kjell Nilsson, a Swedish heavyweight and former Mr. Sweden. George Miller wanted him to be more of a spiritual representation of what Goose became, rather than literally being the same character. Sometimes the best villains are the ones hiding behind masks. Number 7. Television version featured different scenes with American narration. In the mid-80s, a special television cut of Mad Max 2 was created that went far beyond typical broadcast editing. This version didn't just feature deleted scenes and remove violent content, it included alternative takes and scenes shot from different angles. The strangest part was changing the voiceover narration to an American voiceover that sounded completely out of place. I remember the Road Warrior, the man we called Max. This created a parallel universe version of Mad Max 2, like seeing the same story through a completely different lens. The TV cut became its own unique film experience, proving that even post-apocalyptic masterpieces can have alternate identities depending on how they're presented. Number 8. George Miller originally intended Mad Max sequel ending series. Miller had no intention of making another Mad Max movie after the sequel. Mad Max 2 was designed as the second part of a two-part story, an antithetical sequel where Max regains his humanity. The original Mad Max was about Max losing everything and becoming a cold-blooded killer. Mad Max 2 was about Max breaking away from that mindset by saving a small community, completing his character arc. Miller felt the story was complete after 2 films. The subsequent sequels, Beyond Thunderdome and Fury Road, essentially retell the same template. A soulless wanderer helps a struggling society break free from evil threats. But the original vision was always about Max's fall and redemption, not an endless cycle of wasteland adventures. Number 9. Warner Brothers released Road Warrior because Mad Max flopped. Mad Max 2 had a curious relationship with American distribution because the original Mad Max had been mishandled by American International Pictures. AIP's botched release of the first film meant most American audiences had never heard of Mad Max. When Mad Max was released in the US in 1982, it didn't receive a proper release from AIP, which was in the final stages of changing ownership. The first film's poor American performance made Warner Brothers nervous about the sequel, but Warner Brothers recognized the potential and decided to give Mad Max 2 a proper wide release as The Road Warrior. This gamble paid off enormously, making $23.7 million worldwide plus $10 million in Australia. Sometimes a sequel succeeds where the original failed simply because it gets better distribution. Number 10. Title changed Road Warrior because Americans didn't know Max. In Australia, it was simply called Mad Max 2, but Warner Brothers felt American audiences might not know who Mad Max was, thanks to the first movie's limited US release. They worried audiences wouldn't see a sequel to a movie they knew nothing about, so The Road Warrior was born. A recap of the first movie was added to the beginning to keep audiences up to speed. Some American viewers didn't even realize The Road Warrior was a sequel and thought it was an original film. The title became so iconic that some American fans still refer to the character as The Road Warrior instead of Mad Max. One movie, two identities, depending on which side of the Pacific you lived on. Number 11. George Miller spent a year editing Mad Max, hated it. Miller's traumatic experience editing the first Mad Max became a driving force behind the sequel. We had no money for an editor, so I cut the film myself for a year. And every day for a year I was faced with the evidence of what I hadn't done, what I'd failed to do. Every day in the editing suite, Miller tortured himself with questions. Why did I put the camera there? Why didn't I ask the actors to go faster? The process left him feeling like a complete failure as a filmmaker. After Mad Max's release, Miller expressed, "I honestly thought I wasn't cut out to make movies." This devastating self-doubt became the fuel for Mad Max 2's excellence. Sometimes the best art comes from artists trying to prove themselves wrong about their own abilities. Number 12. Oil refinery explosion. Massive. They warned commercial airlines flying. To achieve maximum authenticity, Miller chose to blow up the actual oil refinery set rather than use special effects. The explosion was so enormous that the production had to notify airlines flying over the area about the detonation. The blast created seismic tremors that could be felt for miles around Broken Hill. Local jetliners needed advance warning to avoid any safety issues from the massive fireball and smoke cloud. The refinery set was the most expensive ever built in Australia at that time, making its destruction a costly but spectacular commitment to practical effects. The explosion was detonated on July 22, 1981, creating one of the most impressive practical effects in film history. Number 13. Vernon Wells, nicknamed Barometer Bum Buttocks, changed color cold. Mel Gibson gave Vernon Wells the nickname Barometer Bum during production because of his revealing leather costume as Wes. When Wells' buttocks turned purple from the cold desert nights, the crew would send everyone into the warming bus. Despite filming in the hot-looking Australian outback, production took place during winter and often got extremely cold, especially during evening shoots. Wells's exposed costume made him particularly vulnerable to temperature changes. Costume designer Norma Morrisseau originally wanted Wells' buttocks completely bare, but he insisted on wearing a leather flap because he had to keep jumping on and off motorcycles. Number 14. Max's rescued dog saved from euthanization days before filming. Max's faithful canine companion was actually a rescued dog from a shelter that the crew saved from being euthanized mere days before filming began. The dog's real-life rescue added emotional authenticity to their on-screen bond. During filming, the loud engine sounds on set made the dog so upset that he needed earplugs to complete scenes. After production wrapped, the dog was happily adopted by a camera operator who had worked on the film. The casting choice proved perfect. The dog's genuine rescue story mirrored the film's themes of survival and unlikely partnerships in a harsh world. Sometimes the best performances come from real-life experiences that parallel the fictional story. Number 15. Feral kid actor Minty left acting, became successful jeweler. 8-year-old Emil Minty played the feral kid who communicates by growling like a dog and becomes the film's narrator in old age. Minty's real surname gave him the nickname that lasted throughout his brief acting career. The character was meant to represent humanity devolving so much that people were starting to lose the ability to talk. The feral kid's wordless communication showed how far civilization had fallen in the post-apocalyptic world. After Mad Max 2, Minty had a few minor acting roles, but left the entertainment industry as he grew up. He got into the jewelry business and became a happy father of 2, proving that child actors can have normal, successful lives away from Hollywood. And no, he did not grow up to become a mayor. Number 16. Bruce Spence played similar characters different Mad Max movies.
Look, we had a deal. I show you the gas and you let me go, right?
The arrangement was I wouldn't kill you.
After all,
Bruce Spence played the gyro captain in Mad Max 2, a crook who becomes Max's sidekick. He played a similar role in Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, but apparently as a completely different character. This casting choice was confusing for audiences who assumed it was the same person continuing his story. The similar appearance, personality, and role made it feel like character continuity, but the filmmakers insisted they were separate individuals. Spence would go on to star in other major franchises like Star Wars and The Matrix, but his dual Mad Max roles remain one of cinema's most puzzling casting decisions. Sometimes actors are so perfect for a world that they get invited back to play someone else entirely. Number 17. Movie filmed chronologically because vehicles were being destroyed. Mad Max 2 was actually filmed in the order sequences appear in the final movie, which is quite rare for film production. This was probably done because the vehicles were scheduled to be destroyed during filming. However, natural elements got in the way of this careful planning. Broken Hill was chosen for its reputation of never raining, but during filming it rained so much that production shut down for an entire week. The chronological shooting also allowed for proper character and vehicle progression throughout the story. Watching Max's Interceptor deteriorate and the community's vehicles get battle damaged in real sequence added authenticity that would be difficult to achieve with traditional non-linear filming. Number 18. Best Mad Max version, according Miller, was black, white.
In the roar of an engine, he lost everything.
According to Miller, the best version of Mad Max 2 was a high-contrast black and white version created specifically to record the musical score. This version was printed in black and white to save money, but combined with the soundtrack made a huge impression on Miller. This black and white experience became inspiration for Miller to create a black and white version of Fury Road decades later, which he also considers that movie's best version. Removing color from Mad Max 2 emphasized the stark, elemental nature of the post-apocalyptic world. The high-contrast visuals combined with the driving musical score created a more mythic, timeless feeling that enhanced the film's folkloric qualities. Number 19. 80 vehicles used production, more than half were destroyed. The production used a total of 80 custom-made prop vehicles, with more than half of them destroyed while filming the spectacular chase sequences. This level of vehicular destruction was unprecedented for Australian cinema. Despite the massive production scale, Miller claimed the film took less than 1 year from script to release, minus a remarkably fast turnaround compared to Mad Max Fury Road, which took 12 years from script to screen. The destroyed vehicles became casualties of war in creating one of cinema's greatest car chase movies. Each explosion, crash, and wreck was a real vehicle meeting its end for the sake of authentic action sequences that no CGI could replicate. Number 20. Tanker truck driver couldn't eat 12 hours before stunt. For the climactic chase sequence, stunt driver Dennis Williams was forbidden from eating for 12 hours before filming in case he needed emergency surgery. The rolling of the giant oil tanker was considered so dangerous that medical complications were anticipated. The scene was shot on July 24, 1981, and included multiple dangerous elements: Papagallo's death, Wes's final attack on the feral kid, and the tanker collision with Humongus's car. Williams managed to pull off the stunt successfully without injury, but the 12-hour fasting requirement shows how seriously the production took safety precautions. Sometimes the most spectacular movie moments require the most careful preparation for potential disasters. Bonus fact, emergency room Dr. Miller became legendary action director. George Miller's previous career as an emergency room doctor shaped every aspect of Mad Max 2's production. Before making movies, Miller had worked as a physician treating car crash victims in Queensland, carrying those memories of real violence onto his film sets. When Guy Norris broke his leg during the motorcycle stunt, Miller's medical training kicked in immediately. He examined Norris on the spot before the ambulance arrived, ensuring proper care during the critical first moments after the accident. The beautiful truth about Mad Max 2 isn't that it survived production disasters, weather delays, and multiple injuries to become a masterpiece. It's that the same man who spent years treating real automotive carnage in hospital emergency rooms created the most authentic car chase movie ever made. Miller understood the real physics of crashes, the genuine consequences of high-speed collisions, and the medical realities of stunt work gone wrong. His dual expertise as both doctor and director created a film that was simultaneously incredibly dangerous and remarkably safe. What started as Miller trying to redeem himself after hating his first movie became the template for all future action cinema. And like Max himself, Miller proved that sometimes you have to revisit your failures to create something legendary. What's your favorite Mad Max vehicle, and would you survive one day in the wasteland? Let me know in the comments below, and remember, in the post-apocalyptic world, gasoline is the only currency that matters.